back out here on the Jeep again this evening. This morning I came out here and just cleaned up the shop, and I put the plenishing hammer back together and shoveled everything because we had a few inches of snow overnight. So back out here this evening, and we left off with this roof. I was kind of working on those dents in the back, and we broke that tool again. I repaired that tool again, so if I want to do a little bit more work with it, I can. I think, but what I'm gonna start off with now is we're gonna start getting the roof cleaned up. I'm gonna take my mud hog to it with I don't know what's on there, 36 grit or something, and see if that'll kind of help clean up the roof and knock down some of what's left up there. What we left the roof in was just that burnishing tool, and there was so much product up there. It was burnishing tool and the wire wheel, and it's just not super clean. Like I can't do body work over it, so we're gonna start getting it ready for that, and I think it'll hopefully help me see some of the bad areas that still need to be fixed. I know that there's a ding right here. There's a couple of dings right here that I couldn't get to the inside because of the door frame being here. And there's a couple along the back that we'll end up pin pulling them. But right now, this dent has primer in it, so we can't put a pin on it. And I think that there's just stuff up there that I'm not seeing because of how dirty the roof is still. So we're gonna start cleaning it. There's a couple of spots that need to be sandblasted up there. So yeah, we're just gonna start working on that and start getting stuff cleaned up. And yeah, we'll go from there. Okay. I did even more sandblasting since I shut the camera off. You guys seen like I was going through and kind of blowing the truck off. And as I started to get stuff cleaned off and, you know, getting rid of some of the dust, I seen that there was more. So I ended up sandblasting front and back up underneath the rain gully. I did it on the doors before we primed, but I never did along the front and the back. So I did that. Totally forgot about it until I was blowing and cleaning stuff off, and I started seeing, you know, paint still up in there. So, and it was a good thing that I sandblasted it because there was a lot of rust under that paint. But we got that all cleaned up. I think I got everything sandblasted. Where I'm happy, you know. So we got, you know, underneath there all sandblasted. I think that looks good. You know, we did up underneath the back. I think that looks really good. This is all full of sand again, but you know, we got the inside all done all the way around. I don't know how well the camera is picking it up, but it looks good. I'm happy with it. We made a huge mess again, so I'm going to I'm gonna start cleaning up, but I'm gonna walk around and just make sure before we start cleaning up that there's nothing else that I want to sandblast. But I think we're really close to having everything sandblasted on this, which is a huge step forward. I thought I was done, not last night, the night before. I thought I was done, but I was not. But if there's nothing left to sandblast, I'm gonna start cleaning the shop. So you guys don't need to watch that. I'm just gonna walk around and start blowing out everything and all the nooks and crannies of everything, and start sweeping up and vacuuming, and joys of joy. All right, I'll see you guys back here when we're all cleaned up. So I brought out our stud welding kit, and we got there is a dent here. There's a dent in the same spot on the other side, which I find is kind of odd. And then there's a couple of dents back here, I think, that I want to pull. So I don't know, there's a couple in this back panel here. Like, this one's too sharp of a point. I don't think we'll be able to do anything with that one. I think that one would pull out around it before we did anything good with it. But there's one over there I think we can pull out. I don't think we're getting to it from the inside unless I grind all that gummuck off there, and we're not doing that. So, and then we got this stuff down here. After we pulled a couple of dings out of the roof, we may jump on that. There is a couple of dents up in the middle of the roof that they aren't bad. They're more like wrinkles in the metal. I mean, they're dents, but you know, you can see that there's like a good line going in the roof, and then it's all da-dunk, 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 da-dunk right in the middle. So we may try and, you know, stand on a ladder and reach in here with a hammer while I can see what's going on up there, and just try and put a couple of tap up in there and try and put some more strength back in that metal. As far as being able to hammer and dolly it out, I was thinking about it the other day when I was out here. Either I might have to like climb inside and come up through the windshield and sit here and try and get it, or have Colleen or the neighbor or something come and hold the dolly inside while I do some hammer marks. But until then, let's get this stud gun set up, and let's pull these couple of dents with that, and yeah. So I seen I don't know, it was probably a couple months ago. So a buddy of mine kind of showed me this trick. He had it in his shop, and I just copied, you know, what he had. Probably 20 years ago. And I just seen the other day they actually make these now. You can actually go and buy them. Ta-da! Now that didn't, you know, that didn't take much. I tapped lightly with it. I wasn't hitting it very hard. You hit it too hard, then you're gonna end up with like an Audi, where that pin was. So turn the compressor on. Let me get some airline over here. But you know, we got some dents out over here, here. They feel good. I'm happy with them. We got, you know, we got some dents out here. This feels good. This one feels really good. This one feels pretty good. There's still a little bit there. Same thing with the other side. It's just a weird spot. And then this back,
Like, that looks so much better. I am so happy with how that turned out. Now it's not like, it's gonna need some body work back there for sure, but that looks so much straighter when we look across that back. Like, when you looked across that back before, like, it looked like the wall was coming down and then swooped out like this as you got to the bottom, and it just drove me nuts. And you know, both Colleen and, you know, the owner of the truck was like, dude, it's behind the bed, you're never gonna see it. But it just bothered me. So, and they had so much filler back there before when we stripped this back wall. Like, it was super thick back there. So we're still gonna have a little bit of filler back there to make it, you know, make it nice and smooth looking. But as far as being, you know, like, I don't know, you know, when you guys look at it back here, like, before you could see that metal was pulled out, and now, you know, it looks pretty straight with the back wall. I'm much happier, you know, with that. I mean, you know, to me, you know, it looks like this is bowed out, but there's the framing that's back there. There's really nothing we could do about it. You know, it looks like this is kind of pushed in, but I think it's all just, you know, an optical illusion, kind of. Like, I think that this is out a little bit down here, but, you know, I think with just the dings and the dents and stuff, you know, the back of this cab was pretty hammered. But I think we're looking much better. I'm much happier with that. It looks a lot straighter. I'm gonna call it with that. I think I may, there's a small ding right here. I'm gonna pull him with the pin puller. But other than that, I think, you know, we're gonna call it done with the back of this cab. I'm gonna call it done with metalwork. We are done, and we are ready to start body work on this cab. So I'm super happy with the way that this back end has turned out. But we're getting some tin canniness to it, and we have, you know, we have some humps that I would like to get rid of. You know, right here was where the crease was. You know, we pin pulled this last night to get this to come out some, and it's still in a little bit right here, but then it's out right here. So I'm probably gonna turn this into a nightmare, but we're gonna film this, because every time I do this, I'm always scared to film it, because you know, I don't want to mess something up and have it on camera, and I gotta just keep telling myself, like, if I mess it up that bad, I don't have to put it out there for everybody to see. But I always end up making it better. So, and then when I'm done with it, you know, I end up wishing that I had videoed it. So this time I'm gonna video it, and we're gonna do a little heat treating. So when you do heat treating, now I'm gonna explain this to the best of my knowledge. I am not the best at it, but I always get it to work. So when you're doing heat treating, you need to be able to get to whatever side is extruding. So here we have our low spot. So if we heat this low spot up, this metal is going to swell up. Hang on a second. Be right back. My earpod keeps telling me it's dead. So we got some high spots through here. We got a low spot here. When you heat up a low spot, it's going to expand on that side. And you need to be able to get to the high spot of the expand with a hammer. So we don't want to do anything with the low spot here because I can't get to it from the back. So we have our high spots here. When you heat this up, it's going to expand and grow out this way. And then when it's red hot, you want to hit it with a hammer so that it dents that high spot. And then while it's still hot, hammer and dolly everything out, and then with a cold wet rag, shrink it. So when you have a high spot out here, you can heat treat it. If it's a dent, you can't heat treat that unless you can get to it from the opposite side. So we want to stay away from our dent because we don't want to make our dent worse. We just want to work on the high spot here, if that makes any sense. Okay, so we got like a high spot here, high spot here. Start with the small one first. Now this works better if you actually have a torch set up with like a pencil style tip on it. But I don't have that, so I'm getting it red hot. That grew. I don't know if you guys can see that in the video. And while it's still hot, get it under here without burning ourselves. Easier when you can get to everything, and we have a hard time getting to everything here. So when you heat this up and it swells up and you'll watch it swell out. You want to smack it right in the center and create that dent. So then you have a dent in the middle of this high spot. So then you take your dolly from the back and you hammer around the ring of the dent where it's still high. And you hammer that all out nice and flat. And then you cool it and then it shrinks everything back and it gets rid of your high spot. So we got rid of our high spot there. I'm happy with that. Let's work on this one here. Start to swell up. I'm watching it grow. Getting a nice red hot spot. And that's where you want to hit it, is right at that red hot spot. Now we got a dent in the middle and we got our high spot around the outside. Work all this while it's hot. Did you hear it pop? Because because it shrank everything back in. So for a while, when I was doing this, I was making it not, you know, this panel here, but in learning how to do this, I always goofed up, and what I would do is I would heat this up to where it was red hot. I would smack my dent in it, and then I would cool it with my rag, and then I would try and hammer everything out. And I just made it worse. It just turned into a giant tin can instead of doing what it was supposed to do. And I was doing it wrong. You gotta do all your hammering while it's still hot. You gotta kind of be quick with it and then cool it. So much better. So before, like I said, there's a little bit of a low spot here, and it actually feels better. It feels like doing this heat spot here. It was right at the end of that crease. Doing that heat spot here and shrinking this, I believe that it pulled the metal here, so it tightened up this metal here. But it's nice and straight now. We don't have, feels like there's a little bit more of one right here, so we may heat up right here and do one there. Man, working with out here in this cold, I'm trying to do work that isn't affected by the cold, like body work and priming. I kind of don't want to do it at the moment because it's so cold out here. So I'm trying to do stuff that, you know, metal work, it doesn't really affect it being cold. So, but man, my hands are freezing for, you know, using this cold water to, and it is cold water. It has a giant ice cube in the bottom of it. This water, it normally sits in my cabinet. I actually do a lot of heat shrink stuff, and it was frozen, so I had to go in the house and fill it up with some water. But it is just ice cold being out here working on this. Okay, let's do a little bit more here. My lighter's getting cold. I don't have a whole lot of room in here to work, to try and get this dolly in there and to try and swing the hammer, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. Okay, we're getting our red dot. I watched it all swell out. Move quick, get my dolly back here without burning myself. Feels good. I can feel that there is a high spot between the two now. So there's a high spot right in between the two. So we'll go ahead and we'll hit that guy next. awkward position for me to be in. That feels much better. Okay, we're able to get that last little bit without heat treating it. I'm using towel run over it because I can feel everything through the towel. I've explained in other videos, I believe it's Monte Carlo roof video, I explained that if you're having a hard time feeling dings and dents and low spots and waves, use a paper towel. Put the paper towel in between your hand and the vehicle, rub with the paper towel, and it like magnifies what you can feel. Sometimes I do so much of this stuff, I can see better with my hand than I can see with my eyes. So I can rub my hand across a panel and I can feel where every wave, dent, ding is. And sometimes I do it so much in a day that I kind of become blind in my hand. I don't feel it. I have a hard time feeling stuff anymore because I've been feeling for it all day. And I'll have to grab a paper towel and feel with the paper towel, and then I can feel it again. So it's just a little trick that if you're having a hard time feeling something, grab a towel. Paper towel is the best, but I have this in my hand, and rub your hand across it, and you'll be able to feel if there's dings, dents, high spots, whatnot in it. So I can also see with this being wet and wiping the metal and being shiny, you can also see it where it looks like maybe a little bit more work here. If I don't explain this heat treating very well, I apologize. If you guys go look up Carl over at Make It Custom, he has his own YouTube channel, and he explains very well how to heat shrink metal. He uses a torch to do it. And he explains exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. And then he also he has a shrinking disc. I don't have a shrinking disc yet. I've looked at them, they're in my cart. I just haven't gotten one yet. Never used one, so it'll be a learning experience. But shrinking discs, they do similar to what this does. It's this stainless steel disc that goes on, basically it goes on your buffer. It's a big one like that. And it goes on there and you run it across your metal and it only hits on the high spots. And being that it's stainless steel up against metal, it creates friction and it creates high spot or heat on those high spots. And you run over it with your shrinking disc. It heats up all the high spots, and then you come back with your cold rag water, your cold water rag, and run over it, and it'll cool down those high spots, and it shrinks everything. And he's really good at like getting panels like 99.9% straight. He's really good at it. Okay, we're done with this side. I'm happy with it. We're gonna jump over to the other side now, do the same thing. Okay, so we got giant high spot right here. So a little bit of a low spot here, high spot here. Now again, that side, after we were done heat treating it, like it pulled a lot of this low spot out with doing the heat treatment. So fingers crossed it does the same thing here. I was real happy with the way that this turned out last night. The more I looked at it, the more I just couldn't leave it alone. I had to do more to it. Feels much better. There's no more tin candy to it. Now our crease that went across here, it did not pull out like that side did. So we still have our crease. I mean, we worked a lot of that crease out last night, but the problem is that right across here, underneath, all the way across, there's a brace. And this crease is right, like this brace is right here, the crease is right here. So I can't get to the back side of that crease to pull. You know, we did some pin pulling through here and we pulled a lot of it out, but we weren't able to get all of it. You know, I could probably try and pin it again and see if we can get it out. But the problem is that when you're pinning and you're trying to pull on the pin, you know, there's nothing bracing this bottom. You know, maybe cut a 2x4 to go between the frame rail and the bottom of this, and then try and pin it that way. I don't know, but I think we're looking better. We got a high spot here. I think we're gonna end up heat treating a little farther down. It's feeling better. I'm happier with it. Let's do a little bit more. Maybe the more we do, the more chance we have of it pulling some of that crease out. Some that were just a little longer so I could go up and try and squeeze on that crease. Okay, much happier with the way that this looks, the way that it feels. Like I said, I was super happy with it last night when I went in. Just cause, you know, if you remember there was a huge crease in here and these things were pulled, you know, way out. Like they were almost to where, you know, this little clamp guy is. That's how far these were pulled out. And we got them hammered in and straight again, and it was just, you know, 100 times better than what it was when we started. And I was ready, you know, to call it quits there. And then I came out this morning and I was looking at it, and I could just see that there was humps in it, you know, and with those humps in there, like the only way that you're gonna, you know, get rid of those humps is either doing what I just did, or you're gonna have to fill with filler. And you know, we got a low spot across here and then a giant hump. You're gonna end up with, you know, 3/4 of an inch thick of filler, you know, here again. So that's what I'm, you know, the whole reason I'm, you know, trying to work on all this back here, you know, is for one, to get it back in where it should be, because it just drove me nuts sticking out like, you know, a couple of wings. But you know, I had an inch of filler in here before, so you know, trying to get that down to a minimum. Like I said last night, you know, Colleen's like, it's behind the bed, you're never gonna see it. Even my buddy that owns the truck said the same thing, like, it's behind the bed, you're never gonna see it. But you know, one of my goals, not just with this Jeep, but anything that I work on, I try and get it to where I'm happy with it and use, you know, the least amount of filler possible. I'm going to use filler regardless, but if I can knock that down to you know, a thin coat of filler, then, you know, then I'm happy with it. So you know, this is definitely going to get a coat of filler back here. It's going to be fun to do, being that just everything is in your way back here. But yeah, I think I'm happier with it now than I was when I went in last night, and I was pretty darn happy when I went in with it last night. So I think that's you know, maybe let's put a pin in here and pull that guy. You know, it's been cold out here. You know, we spent a couple of days working on the roof, and I'm, you know, I'm tickled pink with the way that the roof turned out. And now, you know, we're working on this back wall, and we're just, you know, spending a little bit of time here and there, spending a couple days on it. And, you know, I'm super happy with the way everything's turning out now with this as well. That is a very rusty spot, so let's hope that that pin stuck. Good. You know, we got that dent pulled up there. I had a pin that was sitting here. I don't know what all we videoed of this, but this was caved in real bad right here. This whole corner was. This, I know that there's a bunch of work. We actually filled a lot of this with weld, but we pin pulled the bejesus out of this. We pin pulled the bejesus out of this line, and then there was a huge like tin can thing here once we pin pulled that. So this area right here got heat shrunk. So, you know, we got the pin. There was a pin sticking out there. My buddy was here the other day, and he was looking at it, and he's like, "Is that a screw sticking off from the inside?" I was like, nope, that is one of my pins that I have not grinded down yet. So we grinded that down, pulled that dent. We did some heat treating down there. I'm much happier with everything. Again, I was happy with it last night. And then this morning, I just felt like it needed some more work. It was too cold to work out here this morning, but I came out here, was taking a look at, you know, our work that we did last night. you know, sometimes you just got to walk away from it and, you know, get a fresh start. So last night I was happy with it. I walked away, slept on it, got a fresh start, came out here this morning, and I was like, you know what, I think we can make it a little bit better. And I think we just did. So hopefully you guys learned something. That's the first time, like I said, that I've videoed me doing that heat shrinking. And it's always because I'm scared to video it. Like I said, it's one of those things that's kind of a lost art form. You don't see a lot of people doing it, like at least not like on YouTube. Like if you search how to heat shrink on YouTube, like you get a handful of videos that show up. But it's kind of a, you know, I would say it's kind of a lost art form, kind of like leading. You know, a lot of people nowadays, you know, if you can't pin pull it, you fill it, you know. So hopefully you guys learned a little something. That is something that I have learned since I've moved into this shop. So that is more of a recent, there's a lot of stuff that I have learned since I've moved into this shop. You know, the plenishing hammer, the English wheel, the shrinker and stretcher I had before. I had actually picked up that shrinker and stretcher when we lived in our townhouse. And on the parking lot of our townhouse, I did a 62 Impala. And what I did was I cut out all the rust and I welded in new metal and body worked it out and primed it. And it went off somewhere else to get painted. It just recently actually got painted. It came out awesome. It looks great. But to make some of the bends and the curves, I needed the shrinker and stretcher, and I didn't have one. And the shrinker and stretchers, you know, was new to me too. I never had one of those, but I knew I needed it for that job, and it worked perfect. It worked awesome. That car looks great. So the shrinker and stretcher is still fairly new to me, and we're learning that here as well. And the heat shrinking, you know, I have learned, you know, since we've gotten in here. And, you know, I've learned from just trial and error and watching Carl on Make It Custom. And Carl is what I watched to figure out that I was doing it backwards, where I was explaining that I was heating it up, I was hammering the dent in, and then I was cooling it, and then I was trying to, you know, hammer it out, and it was just making it worse. It was stretching the metal out more than what it was when I started. And that's why I didn't like filming what I was doing, because it seemed like every time I did it, I just made it worse. And it just took me longer to get it right. But you know, every time I ended up getting it, but I ended up having to go to Carl and watch his video to figure out that I had one of the steps backwards. I had the cooling part of it in the wrong position. Like, you know, there's step 1, heat it up. Step 2, knock the dent in. Step 3 is to work the ring around it, and step 4 is to cool it. And I was reversing step 3 and step 4, which was just making everything worse. But like I said, I always got it, and at the end of the day, I was like, damn, I should have videoed that. So this time we videoed it. I hope you enjoyed it. I think I got it down path now, as far as the step process of it. And yeah, hopefully now you'll see more of that on video, because I do it a lot. And hopefully soon, I've told Colleen I
there's some work on the mini truck project back there that we got coming up that I got to do, and I wanna do it in lead. I don't do lead work. I don't know lead work, but I'm gonna attempt it, and we're gonna try it. And for that, I think it's time that I pick up a torch, an actual real torch kit. I've wanted one around here for a while. You know, it'd be nice to be able to use it to cut stuff and heat stuff. And if we have all the proper tips for everything, then we can do, we can do leading, and we can, do heat shrinking. So, and I think, some of the thicker stuff, I'd really like to get a plasma cutter. A plasma table would be awesome for, cutting out, plates when we're doing frames or whatnot. But even, until we get that stuff, if I get a torch, I can rough cut everything out with the torch, and then we can go in and just trim and clean everything up with grinders. So, but yeah, hopefully maybe this summer we'll pick up a torch, and then the heat shrinking process will be a little nicer, because you can kind of pinpoint it with that if you have the proper tips for it. Where just the regular torch, it works, but it's just, you get what you get out of it. Like, it heats up an area, and that's it. Like, you ain't doing nothing about it. So it would be nice to be able to fine tune it. But anyways, enough gabbing, enough talking. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. Still got a couple of cold days here. Next week is looking awesome. So it looks like we're going to be in the mid to upper 40s all next week. So hopefully we'll be able to get some body work done. I will talk to you guys later. Have a good night. I am out before I keep talking.